It's Monday, November 27th. I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Football Show. It is a hell of a day to talk ball, and joining me to do just that is Scott Pianowski. Scott, buddy, hope you had a good Thanksgiving. What's going on?
Great Thanksgiving. Another exciting week of football, at least bouts of excitement with bouts of ennui. And if you are a favorite bettor, what did they go? 11-3-1 against the spread. So it was a good week for the squares. Not a lot of action in elimination pools, and a lot to talk about, a lot to break down. Nobody better to do it with than Mr. Matt Harmon.
Right back at you, my man. And we start, as we always do, with Sunday Night Football, a really fascinating game between the Ravens and Chargers. Ravens 20, Chargers 10. Predictable end-of-game situation for the Chargers to be in, of course. You want to talk Ravens or you want to talk Chargers out of this one first, buddy?
I guess we can get the Chargers out of the way. Keenan Allen is now on pace to catch 149 passes, which would tie the record of Michael Thomas, although Thomas did it in a 16-game schedule. 149 passes is just hard to fathom, but the Chargers don't have that second pitch. I'm sure if you told the Ravens, you told John Harbaugh, look, Keenan Allen's going to catch 14 passes, but they're only going to go for 7.5 yards a pop, 106 yards for the day. Justin Herbert is held right around 5 yards per attempt. They would take that. They would sign off on that. I don't want to dismiss what Allen's doing, but this offense has no explosion. There's no splash plays, you know. I hate to see, I don't think Austin Eckler's playing at 100%, and I applaud him for playing, but you know, he doesn't look like the same guy. Herbert's pocket awareness hasn't been. He took a couple of sacks you just can't take tonight. It's hard to watch the Chargers, and I don't know, Matt, maybe I've just been guilty of overrating them. This year was the year I finally stopped. I said, okay, I'm not going to view them as a playoff team, as a quasi Super Bowl contender. And we know their season unfairly got unplugged when Mike Williams got hurt, but you would think by now they'd have something else going downfield, and it's never Quentin Johnston. And I know some of the other guys have gotten hurt and stuff. You know, Guyton was able to play tonight, was really not much of a factor. I'm at the point, the Chargers have gone from a team I couldn't wait to watch to a team that I just don't enjoy watching anymore.
Yeah, I knew going into Sunday night this was going to just be not a good watch from the Chargers offense, because I'm leading my don't care section in the care don't care recap column with I don't care about Keenan Allen's catches. And like just as you said, to be clear, he's a fantastic player, one of the best receivers of this era. And he's having what might be his best season at age 31. Something neither of us saw coming. Something that probably nobody saw coming, even if you were in on Keenan Allen this year at his fantasy ADP. And it's like, okay, so what?
So
right?
What?
It sucks. Not for Keenan Allen individually. Like I want him to get every chance he can to show what an incredible player he is. But so what? Because nobody else is doing anything else. You know, John Harbaugh in the halftime, for the pre-halftime interview on the sideline, basically said, and coaches don't normally say this, like, oh yeah, we're doubling Keenan Allen, like we're sending extra attention to his way. One, he can say that because it's like, well, no like, I mean, what else are you gonna do? Of course you're doubling Keenan Allen. Of course, that's obvious. You can say it because it's obvious. And then the second thing is like, it's crazy that he says that, and it's like nobody else is making them pay. And just the halftime box score, Keenan Allen had 5 catches on 5 targets, 35 yards, like you said, 7 a pop, the 1 lost fumble, and nobody else is doing anything. Gerald Everett had 1 catch for 31 yards. Austin Eckler, 2 for 7. Josh Kelly, 1 for 6. Jalen Guyton, 0 catches on 3 targets. Somebody replied to me and said, oh, you must have forgot to include Quentin Johnston. I was like, I'll refresh the page. Let's see. Knowing obviously that he did not get a target in the first half. I've said for weeks they're playing with 10 guys on offense with him out there. He unfortunately gets hurt in this game after he didn't get a catch on one of his targets. So it's just a brutal offense right now. Can't run the ball, can't run block, can't pass protect, can't do anything besides throwing the ball to Keenan Allen. And it's like, again, this is all great for Keenan Allen. It's awesome for him in fantasy, but it is just brutal for the rest of the Chargers offense. It's a great defense. I know the Ravens are a great defense. Totally understand that. But to come away with 10 points and this being a completely predictable outcome, it's just embarrassing.
I know it's comically early to put a period on Quentin Johnston's career. We're not even through his rookie season, but we've talked a lot about the Carolina pick of Bryce Young, and they're going to be haunted because CJ Stroud is so good. Just imagine if the Chargers had taken somebody who was more pro-ready than Quentin Johnson, who could step in and play a role right away. Because I think even when they took him, the idea was that it was kind of be a redshirt year. They would take him. He was the fifth receiver, something like that when the season started. But I wonder at what point are people going to start playing the game of, imagine if they had taken somebody else.
Right now, maybe a few weeks ago. I mean, I saw Mina Kimes tweet out oof with the picks back to back of Quentin Johnson and then Zay Flowers right after Zay Flowers delivers the knife, the final touchdown. Zay's not a perfect receiver either at this point. He missed on a downfield chance. He's still figuring it out as a deep receiver. But I mean, you can do stuff to get Zay Flowers the ball because he's just on that move different type of scale. I do wish that, the whole, it's tough with the Quentin Johnson thing. We don't have to sit here and break it down because it's maybe the Chargers could do more to scheme him up and get him in space. But it's if you wanted a guy like that, you should have just taken Zay Flowers or Jordan Addison, who actually gets open from the flanker position. It's just so bad on so many different levels. And you're right. This is not hindsight stuff. This was easy to see coming when they took him over these two receivers who, frankly, were in a higher tier. And at least in my rankings, they were a tier ahead of a prospect like Quentin Johnston.
And it passes what I think Mike Salfino calls the grandmother test, where you take your grandmother who doesn't watch football at all, and you ask her to watch a couple of plays and say, identify who the first round pick was. Zay Flowers identifies himself. I never feel like Quentin Johnson does anything. He's like, it must be him. And maybe it's just, it looks a little bit worse for Quentin Johnson, just the way this week flowed, where Flowers has the big game opposite him, the touchdown catch, and then he has the touchdown run to ice it. Interesting that he went in to make some people happy. He could have gone down at the 1 yard line, but he scored. JSN has had some moments. Jordan Addison's had some moments. Jaden Reed scored on Thanksgiving. We're starting to finally see the Chiefs lean into Rashee Rice, which is, I think a lot of people have been waiting for that to happen. But, Jalen Reagor could have just been a bust for the Eagles. He just happened to get picked in front of Justin Jefferson. And I don't mean to laugh because it just, he didn't ask for that. The Eagles are a team that seems to do everything right when it comes to drafts and appraising players. Imagine if they'd gotten the Justin Jefferson pick right. But the Ravens did just enough to win. Their backfield is still cluttered. Mitchell looked good, but he doesn't get that many touches. Gus Edwards is kind of a touchdown or bust guy at this point. We know Jackson's always going to be involved as a runner. The game gets iced on a carry from Zay Flowers, and he gets to show off his jets. I got a lot of Keaton Mitchell questions today, and I mostly steered away from him because I just don't think the Ravens are at a point where they want to expose him to enough volume. Granted, Keaton Mitchell can make a 50-yard run on any play, but he's only getting 7 or 8 chances to do that on a weekly basis.
Yeah, I thought there was a chance that Keaton Mitchell would eventually just ice out Justice Hill. That didn't happen. He had 5 carries in this game. He was also involved on passing downs. So that is going to make Keaton Mitchell a thin margin for error player. The problem is he gets 9 carries and he averages 7.1 yards per carry. He's just so explosive, right? It's tough, man, because if he takes one of those plays in the low red zone or the high red zone or something like that, and he just rips it in there, he's going to score you a touchdown. It's going to make your week. But he is definitely a very boomer bust. Not even a running back too, right? He's just a boomer bust flex type of play. And it does make Gus Edwards similarly touchdown or bust. And obviously this Justice Hill just kicking around there makes muddles the whole picture up.
You know what else really muddles things is, so Baltimore just lost Mark Andrews. It's the first game after Andrews. So we're like, well, what can Isaiah Likely do? What can Odell Beckham do, who looked good in the Thursday night game? Can Rashad Bateman step up? None of those guys have particularly big games. And now the Ravens go into their bye week. So now there's a week of uncertainty and people heal up and they scheme different things. So I still think a lot of people who might want Likely, they might have an idea of, he's going to be my tight end, or maybe they needed some receiver help. These guys all need prove it weeks before you can play them with any confidence. And they can't prove it next week because they don't play.
Right. It's difficult because this was the spot too.
Right.
Exactly. Beckham's going to go off. This is the spot to do it. Bateman had one great catch. He had another where he should have caught the ball. Just they're just a weird team too, where it feels like, oh wow, what a nice offensive effort from the Ravens, and they score 20 points, and really nobody does anything other than Zay Flowers, who erupts in this game, mostly on the back of a tough to see coming 37-yard run. They get the Rams, the Jags, the 49ers, and then the Dolphins in the last 4 weeks of relevant fantasy performances there, and then Pittsburgh in week 18. None of those games screams like, oh yeah, that's where I'm really going to want to play, one of these pass catchers or anything like that. Maybe Jacksonville, maybe, because that secondary can be exploited, but I don't know. I'm with you that I'm probably not going to feel comfortable playing any of these guys in week 14 against the Rams, even though that's a reasonably decent spot. So maybe week 15 is the moment, but I don't think anybody other than Zay Flowers, who I do think his upside is still being a little discounted, maybe not after he scores 2 touchdowns in a primetime game. But other than him, I don't think there's going to be a guy I'm really like itching to play from this offense.
Do you feel confident about any AFC team being a favorite? The Ravens are going to have, I mean, I really wish they'd go back to the old system with the 2 byes. The 1 bye just doesn't seem right, but the Ravens are in there pitching for it. They're 9-3. Miami's 8-3. The Jags, who I really don't know how good they are, they're 8-3. Big win today over Houston. The Chiefs, seems like a very flawed Chiefs team, but they're still 8-3. And certainly Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes always gives you a puncher's chance. If I offered you, I don't know, free rent or free mortgage for a year, if you picked the AFC champion, who would you gravitate towards right now?
I think it would be Baltimore. Just because their defense is so good. In this game, like, again, we're talking about the Chargers offense and all their flaws, but they had them bottled up and they were fighting and they were going for the ball. And plus, like, I love our colleague Charles McDonald tweeted like cover 0, real man's, like grown man's football on that blitz call to put the game away.
I love being aggressive in that spot. So many teams will be like, well, let's not lose the game on this play. And, they let Keenan Allen catch a 7-yard pass. They said, no, we're not going to let Justin Herbert throw a pass. I love that.
Yeah, exactly. Love that. And that's the ethos of that team. And that's just like what they have going on. So I think it probably would be Baltimore, but I would feel comfortable, like, if you took Baltimore off the table, I'd feel comfortable going with Kansas City. If you offer, I mean, I don't know what I'm having to wager like in collateral here. Not, me paying double my mortgage. Maybe I wouldn't do that. But if you're just saying, hey, free mortgage for a year and Baltimore's off the table, I think I'd feel comfortable going with Kansas City. But that's probably about it, because I do think there's a teardrop between the 1st and 2nd seed right now. And both these teams, like we're saying, have flaws, but I think there's a gap between Baltimore and Kansas City, down to Jacksonville at 3, down to Miami at 4. And then certainly, like, again, we don't know how it's going to settle. Right now, it's Steelers, Browns, Colts. I definitely think there's a gap. Then another teardrop to those 3.
I think back to some of the Charger teams in the past where they wouldn't make the playoffs and people would be like, oh, wow, if they made the playoffs, they could win the whole thing. Everybody's glad they're not in the tournament.
Yeah.
I could see people feeling that way about Buffalo this year, where maybe – look, I like the Steelers for what they are. They're well coached, but they can't win the conference. The Browns, with their quarterbacks, they can't win the conference. The Broncos have made a really nice comeback. Great story. Really nice job from Sean Payton. Nobody thinks they're winning the AFC. I think the Chiefs, the Ravens, teams like that, Miami, I think if you gave them truth serum, they'd be like, yeah, please keep Buffalo out. And before we transition to the full slate, I'll ask you a trivia question for you, Matt, and for anybody listening. Do you know who is the best point differential in the NFL right now?
Isn't it the Buffalo Bills? Is it the Buffalo Bills?
It is not the Buffalo Bills, but it is a team that is not leading its division.
Dallas Cowboys.
It is Colin's beloved. We saw him on Thursday beating up on the Washington Commanders very heroically. Can't wait to see him beat a real team. But man, do they love when they get an outmatched opponent. Although they did lose to Arizona somehow. But yeah, the Dallas Cowboys. They're gonna be a fun team. We talk about they getting the NFC South champion and then probably getting San Francisco in the second round. Anyway, it's gonna be fun. The Chargers, I guess this kind of puts a plug or a period on their season. They go to last place in the AFC West. It's probably it for Brandon Staley. And I don't know, man. We're gonna have some long discussions about Justin Herbert in the offseason. It's hard to be too critical of him because he doesn't have the pieces that you want to have. But remember, it used to be, we talk about draft picks back to back, right? It used to be, oh, what if Miami took Justin Herbert? I don't think nobody has said that in a while.
No, we're definitely on to like the next phase of Justin Herbert's career. Staley won't be involved. I don't think Telesco should be the GM anymore. And look, this is a team we talk about, like teams like, oh, they went all in for this year. the Chargers kicked a lot of cap down to next year. So
For sure.
we're going to be having some uncomfortable like decisions and conversations about just the Chargers as a whole going into 2024. I can't wait to see where those conversations lead us. But you mentioned the Bills and how they might have a little bit of a tough road to make the playoffs. Maybe some more inferior teams might be making it ahead of them. That is probably because a big factor in that is because they dropped a game yet again this week to the Philadelphia Eagles. So let's get into our headliners here. Eagles 37, Bills 34. We were talking about this in our little pre-pro chat. This could go down as one of the games of the year. I don't know. Where do you want to start on this one? Because there's a lot of potential threads to pull here. Another torturous, heartbreaking way for the Bills to lose a game late in this one.
With apologies to the Eagles fans, you're 10-1. I think Jalen Hurts probably got he was the favorite for the MVP before this week. He just had a 5-touchdown game, has a walk-off touchdown to end it. Even though I don't think he necessarily was at his best, 6.5 yards per attempt. He had a couple of turnovers, but whatever. Hurts is probably going to win the MVP. It's the most valuable quarterback award. I have to start with Buffalo because if they don't make the playoffs, they're 6-6 now. And I know you can say this a lot about teams that lose close games, but they are just a handful of plays away from being 11-1 or 12-0 or 10-2. And right now, they're in trouble. May not make the playoffs in a year where the AFC is a lot of good teams. Nobody looks unbeatable. The better teams have obviously had injury trouble. The Burrow injury eliminated Cincinnati. Baltimore just lost Mark Andrews recently. Kansas City, nice to see them prioritize Rashee Rice. We'll get to that later, but they look beatable. Buffalo's going to be killing themselves. This was a game they had control of. They had a multiple score lead. It's raining, a couple of miscommunications, a wrong route run here, a drop pass there. They couldn't stop Philadelphia when it mattered. Great fantasy day, right? Anything you needed pretty much in fantasy got home. I mean, we knew James Cook probably wasn't going to run against the Philadelphia front, but he did enough in the passing game that he gets home. Gabe Davis, I don't know if you would have had the stones to play him, but he was productive, should have been probably more productive because he could have won the game in overtime. It wasn't a huge Stephon Diggs game. I feel like he's leaving stuff on the field every week, had a key drop in the overtime, wet ball and everything, but 6 for 74 and a touchdown. I do not feel sorry for anybody who needed to play Diggs. A quiet game on the other side for A.J. Brown, but here's the bottom line. This was a tough slate, right? A lot of good teams played Thursday. Miami's a really fun team. They played on Black Friday. That opening window today, and the Jaguars-Texans was an entertaining game, and we'll talk about all of them, some longer than others. But we needed some star power in the late window, and we got it. Buffalo, Philadelphia, overtime, but they almost used the whole overtime period, and it's just a stat bonanza, just about anything you needed. Whatever, you would have liked the DeAndre Swift touchdown, but you can't feel that bad. He was involved in this game. A.J. Brown didn't have a huge productive game, but he still scores a touchdown. Jalen Hurts spread out the touchdown. So, a lot of times you see games like this and you think, oh, fantasy bonanza, and it doesn't turn out that way. The touchdowns go to the wrong guys. There's touchdowns on special teams. Teams can't get in the end zone. This was a day where most of the stuff you needed in this game delivered.
Yeah, absolutely. As of now, New York Times, according to the New York Times, Bills have a 14% chance to make the playoffs after losing to the Eagles. And like you said, it was there where Gabe Davis gets open, or, it was probably supposed to be a corner route, but when you get a cover zero look, you got to look back for the quarterback and see where he's throwing you the ball. Gabe doesn't do that. They don't win the game. And you're right that it's felt with Buffalo for a long portion of the season. I mean, when their just defense gets banged with injuries at every single level, and even one of their theoretical best players, Von Miller, is still working back from an injury, it's just felt like it's not your year for Buffalo. I mean, it felt like that for the Bengals too, and then the nail was officially put in the coffin when Burrow goes out for the season. It's okay, well, they don't have their quarterback. It's definitely not their year. Buffalo still has that feel to it, especially because the rest of their schedule, they go into their bye week in week 13 in Kansas City. They get Dallas. They go to LA to face the Chargers. They get New England. Okay, that's nice. And then they're in Miami in week 18. I mean, the New England game's a gimme other than that. And then they lost to New England earlier this year. So there's just a lot of ways where a lot of these Bills players, I think, are going to be looking back just in frustration about, like you said, a wrong route here, miscommunication, a drop into some of those missed opportunities.
Well, you think of the way they've lost games, right? They lose the opening Monday night game of the season on a walk-off punt return in overtime. Somehow the Jets, even with Zach Wilson forced to play, win that game. As you mentioned, they lost to a Patriots team that it's open to question if they even want to win games. But the Patriots played probably their best game of the season. They win that game. They had that crazy Monday night game to Denver where Denver's going to lose. No, there's 12 men on the field. Kick it again. The Broncos win. And this was a game the Bills are really good at dominating the stats, getting it. They go over 500 yards in this game. And Philadelphia's get a little bit of that. I was joking, Greg Rosenthal was mentioning the great NFL.com writer, and I know he's a guy you've worked with before, a colleague. He was talking about, I think this is the fourth straight game the Eagles have been outgained and have won anyway. And I said, well, they're the rich men's Steelers. That's kind of the Pittsburgh MO, right? But Buffalo is, you get over 500 yards, you do whatever you want, you leave a couple of plays on the field. And this is going to be going down. And man, windows don't stay open forever. I know they have Josh Allen locked up, but when you lock up your quarterback on the big contract, you have to cut corners elsewhere. They've already fired their offensive coordinator recently in Ken Dorsey. Sean McDermott, man, sounds kind of harsh. I think he may be coaching for his job over the next month.
Oh, I think that's definitely on the table. When you fire both of your coordinators within a 1 year period,
there's no more cards to play. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, especially when you take back the defensive play calling. Leslie Frazier, did they fire him? Did he leave? Whatever. But especially the Ken Dorsey thing, they're clearly trying to shake things up in the building and just trying to make this thing work. So we'll see what happens with Buffalo. But, from a fantasy perspective, like you said, there's really nothing to analyze from this game because it just sort of went to script at the highest possible range of the outcomes there. So let's move on to the next game here, probably what would have been the game that leading our headliners here if that Eagles-Bills game wasn't so good for me. It was Jaguars 24, Texans 21. Basically, what might decide the AFC South. Really a critical game for Houston to drop, but for Jacksonville, this was another game, Scott, where I've been saying all year, it feels like Jacksonville's leaving meat on the bone. And in the first half, it sure felt like even though they were sort of winning that game and in control of it a little bit, they were leaving meat on that bone. And then, they rip it off in the second half. Calvin Ridley comes alive. Trevor Lawrence has, by EPA, it's his best game of his career, which I thought was pretty surprising. But again, runs in a touchdown, throws a touchdown. You can nitpick a few throws here or there. You probably got to give him that interception back because it was clearly a missed call. Rough officiating game on both sides of it here. So I don't know what stood out to you in this one.
I was hoping for overtime in this game. We didn't get it. And maybe a few more points. We didn't get that as well. But this was the one game that was easy to watch in that early window. Okay, so Trevor Lawrence is back, 9.6 yards per attempt. Calvin Ridley, who was the victory lap guy in September, and then he went invisible, and then the anti-victory lap people had their victory lap, and now Calvin Ridley's back in play. Touchdown, 2-point conversion. Looks like Calvin Ridley. You start him with confidence. Christian Kirk had a perfectly fine game. He just missed a long touchdown where he went out inside the 5. I guess Evan Ingram is going to win the Deontay Johnson Award of the most targets without scoring a touchdown. I feel like it would take government intervention to get Evan Ingram in the end zone.
Dude, it was a journey on Evan Ingram targets in this one too. It felt like everyone was either like Trevor Lawrence definitely missed him for a touchdown, but then other times it's like, good Lord, there's fumbles or there's drops. It's crazy stuff, man. It was wild.
Here's what I want to ask you about the Jaguars. Okay, because I feel like at this point we know who Lawrence is going to be. We know who Ridley is. We know who Kirk is. I don't think I was asked very few Ridley questions this week. So people are back in on him, and they should be. That's fine. And I'm in a league where we've had so many quarterbacks play poorly or get hurt or both, and some teams are on their second quarterback, their third quarterback. I feel like the Browns are on their 17th quarterback. That's no fun. I need Trevor Lawrence to be good because it just makes the NFL better when players like Trevor Lawrence play up to their potential. Travis Etienne all year has been about touchdown deodorant. And what happens when you don't put on the touchdown deodorant? You get 20 carries for 56 yards. You get 4 catches for 30 yards, which is actually, somewhat efficient. We talked a couple of weeks ago about how, and I forget if it was JJ or who it was, JJ Zachariason or one of the other guys, maybe Rich Rebar, was talking about how Etienne and Tony Pollard were kind of having the similar season. It's just Etienne had the touchdowns and Pollard didn't. Etienne was stuffed in fact, at one point, late in the first half, I thought Jacksonville should have taken the field goal, but they decided to try to punch it in with Etienne. He gets swallowed up, and the play didn't work. I don't know that anybody would have scored on that play, but I'm worried about Travis Etienne because when he's not scoring touchdowns, I feel like he's going to get 6 or 7 fantasy points, and I don't know what his true talent level is. There's really nobody pushing him. I'm a Dearness Johnson fan. He did have a long catch in this game. That was a play design win where I think anybody who caught that pass would have gained the 42 yards that Dearness Johnson gained, but they did give him 7 carries. They've been going to Lawrence at the goal line as of late, and Lawrence is such a big guy. It's not hard for him to fall in the end zone. Maybe it's too late to make a trade in most leagues, but are you getting nervous about the Travis Etienne business?
Yeah. I think what his fantasy success has sort of covered up is that the Jaguars have not been a good running team all year. They're 30th in EPA per rush. They're 30th in rushing success rate. This is not like, if you listen to like a typical NFL conversation, they're going to tell you like they're looking at smart metrics and stuff like that, yeah, the run game actually hasn't been very good all season long. A lot of it's because the offensive line hasn't really coalesced, hasn't really come together. That's also been a pass protection issue as well that has limited some of the verticality of this offense. So I think quietly the offensive line has been an issue, which is also not great because Cam Robinson, the left tackle, left this game with a knee injury. I don't know about his long-term status. The Texans also lose Titus Howard in this game as well. So they're not really opening up holes for ETN. And I think ETN is a good back. That's sort of where I'm at with him, is I think he's a good player. I think he's a good back. I think maybe he's not like the most explosive in the open field, but he does make, the first defender miss a decent amount of times. Like I think he's a perfectly capable back of having a really good, of leading a really good rushing offense. So for me, it's mostly on the offensive line. But I will say too, Houston is a good defense. Like DeMeco Ryans has these guys flying around, and they play really hard, and they play really fast, and they play really aggressive up front. So they can overwhelm you, and I think they did overwhelm the Jacksonville Jaguars as a rushing team. The other thing, Scott, I would say that like if Tank Bigsby wasn't like one of the worst running backs in the league this year, we're probably never having the conversation that we had to start like at early parts of the year where Travis Etienne was having an incredible fantasy season, because I think they wanted to trust Tank Bigsby a lot more than they do right now.
Right, yeah, to the point that he's been passed by Dearness Johnson, who I actually think is a pretty good player, not a great player. And maybe with Etienne, it's just he plays for a high-profile college team. He gets drafted early with all that draft capital, and we want to think that maybe he's a special player, and maybe he's just one of several running backs who's capable, but not a true game changer. And I don't think if Etienne were to miss any time and then they had to maybe make Johnson the featured back, I don't think the Jaguars offense would look all that much worse. Now, I know the Texans lose in this game, and I know they only scored 21 points and Stroud took some sacks, but man, I love watching this offense. I love how Stroud is mobile enough he did run for 47 yards and a touchdown today, which is generally not his game. The touchdown was there for the taking. He ran it in, but generally he's extending plays to look downfield. And his receiver, I mean, so we were in on Nico Collins before the year, and it's nice when a story comes together like Nico Collins, the plane taking off, first year who's okay, second year get a little bit better, third year the breakout the way it used to be. He looked terrific today. Tank Dell had a good game, which almost an outstanding game. He was one of the best catches of the day. He was just out by like a toenail. But he's obviously a good player. Singletary did nothing on the ground, but he was involved in the passing game. I just love watching CJ Stroud. And in a year, as I said earlier, we're looking for answers at quarterback. And CJ Stroud, I feel sorry for Bryce Young. We'll see what happens to his career. It doesn't look good right now. But the thing I feel really bad about is he got picked in front of CJ Stroud, and people are just not going to forget that. I think it has a chance to be like a Justin Jefferson, Jalen Reagor thing, like, oh my God, or a Michael Jordan, Sam Bowie thing. Like, how did that happen? Because CJ Stroud is just never rattled, and he can make all the throws. He can make touch throws, although he did actually leave a couple of throws on the field today. But I love watching the Texans every week. DeMeco Ryans was a great hire as well. So what a home run for the Texans, a organization that went through the whole Watson mess, and they had some coaches who obviously weren't long-term solutions. And then this year, I think they nailed the coach. They nailed the quarterback. So now they're set up. You could argue they're set up to be. I know Jacksonville's got a really good setup now too, but I think I might take Houston for the next 5 years more than the Jaguars.
I think it's a really good conversation and a really good debate as to which of these two teams would you bet on? Because I really trust Doug Peterson and I really trust Trevor Lawrence, but you're right that the DeMeco Ryans, CJ Stroud insertion into this Houston Texans franchise, I mean, it has been truly transformative, and there's really no other way to say it. I mean, for God's sake, Scott, like at one point late in the game when the Texans are driving to win the game, I had two thoughts in my head. Number one, oh my God, I have them on the ISO screen here. Like that's the game I had on the ISO screen all day long.
Same.
Because I was so dialed into it. And at one point I'm looking at it and I'm like, I've literally said to myself, like, these are freaking Texans, man. And like they're on the ISO screen and I can't wait to see what happens next. And that brings me to my point about CJ Stroud. Like, I'm with you. There were throws that he missed. There were plays that he left on the field. And I would categorize those as mostly just nothing but rookie mistakes. And it was, again, one of these games I'm watching and I'm not really tracking the box score. And then I look at the box score after the game. He completed 72% of his passes, 8.4 yards per attempt, went over 300 yards, threw 2 touchdowns, and added 47 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Like, we're saying that he left some plays on the field, he made some rookie mistakes, and that was still his final stat line. Like, I know they didn't win the game. Honestly, I probably would have left the game in Stroud's hands on 4th and 12 rather than trying to kick that long field goal. But, whatever. It is what it is. That's the type of player he is, where he's having this type of impact on this team that was so far gone 12 months ago. So it's just incredible to watch these guys play. Collins is great. Dell is great. They're so well set up for the next 2 years with that trio alone, and then not to mention D'Amico Ryans and Bobby Slowick. We'll see if Bobby, sticks around
for sure.
He gets a head coaching job. That will be interesting to track in the offseason.
It's so funny how both of these games, the first 2 games we talked about, came down to a field goal from the moon to force overtime. The Eagles make it. The Texans, the kick hits the crossbar and doesn't go
so
over.
Close.
I know we have a lot to get to, so I don't want to make this a long discussion, but I have trouble every week ranking Collins and Dell. Now, they're both fantasy starters, so I feel like it's not even really that big of a deal. You probably don't roster both of them, so you start the guy you have. But who do you feel better about moving forward?
God, that's a great question, because 4 weeks ago, I was easily thinking Nico. Then the last 3 weeks, I'm thinking maybe Tank Dell. And then after today, I'm like, well, you know what? This is a reminder of why Nico Collins is a really, really good player and super important to this team, because I think he is the only one on this roster still that can play the X receiver role. And I know when you have a debate like that, you've got a good receiver core. When you're trying to pick between these 2 young guys that should really only have more room to grow, I do think Tank Dell is special. So I maybe give me Tank Dell, but it's razor thin in terms of who I think is the better player long term.
Yeah, I think I would rank Dell maybe just an eyelash higher, only because it's such a good indicator when you're this good in the NFL right away as a rookie. It took Collins some time, and there was a lot of things that went into that, and he was asked to play with some really bad supporting cast, so it wasn't all entirely Collins' fault. He also at times wasn't healthy. But the fact that Dell, it's like when we talk about breakout age in college, it's a really good indicator if you're good at 18, 19, 20, and if you don't stay in college for 4 years and stuff like that. But Tank Dell, man, I'd love to go back to the summer and have somebody whisper to me, Tank Dell, you're going to be able to pick your round on him. If you knew Tank Dell was coming, you could have him on every team. Now, you and I were trying to draft Nico Collins, other people were getting in our way. You could have had all the Tank Dell if you wanted, and it kind of hurts me that I don't.
Yeah, and he didn't even really start the year super, super hot, but he was awesome in the preseason. And it was like, okay, great. Maybe the Texans' 4th wide receiver, because we didn't know if he was going to play in front of John Mechie. Maybe the Texans' 4th wide receiver is awesome in the preseason. That's something you can ignore, but it actually ended up being really good signal. And CJ Stroud was better than anybody possibly could have imagined. So, all right, those 2 games are great. That was going to take up a good chunk of our conversation. The rest of the games, we'll see. But still, remaining in the headline section, the Steelers are back, baby. Steelers 16, Bengals 10. And they did it, Scott. They fire Matt Canada, and they go over 400 yards of offense, which has never happened in the Matt Canada era. So shout out to the Steelers. They still only score 16 damn points. They have a very weird sequence where Deontay Johnson scores a touchdown, but the referees call it not a touchdown. Mike Tomlin doesn't challenge it. Then Johnson's loafing around on the next play, clearly still upset about it. Jalen Warren fumbles the ball. The Bengals take it back. So the Steelers are still verifiably weird, but I will say what stood out to me in this game is that they did get the middle of the field activated, which has so often been a huge problem in the Matt Canada offense. I mean, almost like they ignore the middle of the field and they just throw sideline stuff, hitches, comebacks, go routes. They still hit a big go route to George Pickens down the sideline, 43 yards on that one. But Pat Freiermuth, does what we were expecting him to do all season, buddy, because we were talking about Pat Freiermuth so much in the offseason. 9 catches, 120 yards, and a lot of that stuff was over the middle of the field.
Pat Freiermuth was one of the best players I saw in that early window. We were joking beforehand that I have 2 TVs, multiple computers, and I bought a third TV this week. You know, TVs are just so darn cheap now. You can get a great one for peanuts. And then I saw the early window of games, and I saw how unimposing it was. There was only 6 of them. I'm like, well, I'll set up the TV next week. I don't need a 4th screen today. But if I did, I would have been watching Pat Freiermuth run, and not just – a lot of times tight ends have big games because the defense concedes it and it's sitting down in zones. Pat Freiermuth was running routes and was just running like a grown-ass man the whole game, running over people. Now, unfortunately, even on a day where Kenny Pickett gets 8.4 yards per attempt, throws for 278, there's just never going to be room for that many Steelers to get home.
Yeah.
Harris was better than Warren today. Warren lost a fumble. Harris had more carries. I thought this might have been a week that Warren kind of shoved Harris out of the way. Now, they both played, but when Harris really needed to come up with a key game. If Warren was better today, new coordinator, new teacher, you want to look good, first day of school, Harris had the better game. So now we're kind of back to that committee where now Warren is maybe not an automatic starter. We know what's the deal. Even, again, Pickett was better, but they only scored 16 points. It's still Deontay Johnson's a maybe, and George Pickens is a maybe. Freiermuth goes to a start position because tight end is so weak right now. And of course, next week, 6 teams don't play. Maybe you'll even talk yourselves into one of the Steeler receivers. But it's funny. I want to say good things about the Steelers. They still scored 16 points and huffed and puffed to beat a Bengals team whose soul is just cut out of them. When Joe Burrow gets hurt, they all know their season is over. The best thing I can say about the Bengals today is Jamar Chase made 2 of the best. Whenever a pass is deflected, it's usually either incomplete or intercepted. It's never caught by the offensive player, but twice Jamar Chase did it today, which just shows what a special guy he is. But Mixon went nowhere. Jake Browning, I mean, like he 8.7 yards per attempt, but they only put up 10 points. Even when T. Higgins comes back, whenever that is, I'm not eager to play him. And with the Bengals 5-6, who knows? Maybe Higgins doesn't come back. Obviously, their season ended the moment Joe Burrow got hurt, and it sucks because I love Jamar Chase. I love Joe Burrow. Joe Mixon's value goes from, he's propped up by the surroundings, to now even Joe Mixon isn't an automatic play anymore, and nobody takes it's no fun to say that. Nobody feels good about that.
Yeah, Jamar Chase is firmly in our Garrett Wilson zone, Scott, of like, tell me before the game that he gets 81 yards. Shoot, I'll take it. I will not gamble for any more than 81 yards.
I can't believe how low I ranked him this week. I had him like 18th or 20th or something like that. Yeah. And I'm glad nobody asked me a question on Chase, because I might have said don't play him. How could you feel good about Jake Browning, who's the Bengals? And I know a lot of people will say, well, you should have a better backup quarterback. Well, a lot of teams don't even have a good starter. There just aren't that many good quarterbacks to have.
And there's been so many injuries that it's like revealed the backup quarterback problem and just how valuable that position is when you get a really, really good one.
For sure.
So I definitely think some teams could have planned better. Looking at you, New York Jets, I think some teams could have planned for better. But usually it's just there's the quote from Tom Moore, the longtime Colts offensive coordinator. Like, why don't you let the backup quarterback practice? Because if Peyton Manning goes down, we're effed, and we don't practice effed. And he actually says the word. And like that's the case with the Bengals. Okay, Joe Burrow goes down. Like, Jake Browning can do what he does, but you're mostly effed. And that's what the Bengals
that's
are.
The fragile the whole idea of anti-fragility, right? Like, some people will draft their best ball teams and draft a very short running back room, and their whole strategy is, okay, I need these guys. I need Christian McCaffrey to be healthy all year, and if he's not healthy, then cue up the Tom Moore quote. So that's the idea there, is that you rather than try to have a weak answer that you might eke into the playoffs and lose in the first round, just say, no, we don't practice that. We don't play for that, because there's really no solution anyway.
Last thing on this game, there was a report from Ian Rappaport this morning, and I'm not calling out Ian specifically on this, but it was like, the Steelers change offensive coordinators, and they want to get the ball to George Pickens more, and they want to feature Jaylen Warren more. If you took stock in that, I'm sorry, but like, you haven't been paying attention to this game long enough, buddy, because George Pickens finishes 3rd on the team in targets, and Jaylen Warren finishes with fewer carries than Najee Harris. Like, they're not telling Ian Rappaport what they want to do, okay, and then just going to go do it. So
I've never understood that angle anyway. I mean, sometimes that stuff comes in, and sometimes it doesn't. I think for the most part, though, and look, I have respect for Ian Rappaport. I have respect for Adam Schefter. I think a lot of times those national writers, Peter King, they just get used by the teams to just perpetuate what they want to perpetuate. And
totally. Or agents, mostly agents.
And I feel you're right. The agents are involved in all that. I do feel like Warren had the upper hand today, but the moment that it looked like Harris had the hot hand, they flipped on that. And that's not to be surprising to anyone. So I totally get you on that.
All right, next game up here. Falcons 24, Saints 15. Scott, what stood out to you here?
Yeah, I said Freiermuth was one of the best players of the 1 o'clock window, but the best or maybe most impactful player I saw was Bijan Robinson. Now, 19 touches. We'd still like that to creep a little bit more. And I know that Tyler Algier was used as a closer. He still got his 10 carries. But Robinson, rushing touchdown, receiving touchdown. They used him traditional under center handoffs. They used him in the pistol. I thought the creativity in the running game was very, very good. The offensive line was fantastic. A couple times, Robinson wasn't even, I don't think he was touched on his touchdown run because the blocking was so good. And we all fell in love with Robinson, not only at Texas, but early in the season. Just some of the cuts he was making were ridiculous. And then, Arthur Smith had to, I got to be, Tyler Algier has to play a lot. We got to get Cordell Patterson going. And they finally, I think, they had to win this game, right? If they wanted to stay in the NFC South race, this is the game they had to have. They won it with Robinson, the featured guy. 4 of the next 5 opponents for the Falcons are bottom 10 or top 10, depending on how you want to frame it. 10 of the 10 easiest teams to get fantasy running back points against, they're going to play 4 of those 5 teams down the stretch. And then the final Saints game is in week 18. I think that might even be flexed. It might be the NFC South Championship game. Here's what I'm trying to say. If you've weathered the storm with Bijan Robinson, I was asked a ton of start-sit questions today on Robinson, and I try to answer as many as I can. I know I'm going to get a lot of them wrong. I was very proactive on Robinson. And what do teams do after their bye week? We always talk about that as a big reveal week, right?
True.
The way they prioritize Robinson is a huge green light. The schedule's a green light. If you weathered the storm and now, you're maybe a game or two over 500, you're going to get in as a 5 or 6 seed. Nobody wants to play you, because I could easily see Bijan Robinson being one of the 2 or 3 most impactful players in the fantasy playoffs.
I love that take, and I hope you're right. As of right now, the Falcons lead the NFC South, and they would be a playoff team. I mean, we know whoever is coming out of this division is going to be disgusting. That Saints Falcons
and get crushed by Dallas probably in week 1, much to producer Colin's delight, unless they overtake the Eagles. Although the Eagles are just not going to lose, so Dallas is going to be favored in that game too. By the way,
it is destiny for the Cowboys to smash the Falcons or Saints, whoever ends up winning this division, in the first round of the playoffs, and then have to face the 49ers in the next week. They're going to
win 40-10. There's going to be Dak Prescott discourse the whole week. Is this finally the moment for Dak Prescott? Man,
put it out there right now. Like what happened last year? Like all the discourse, all of it is just going to be the same thing this year. In the playoff perspective with the Cowboys, that is what it is.
But by the way, just to make the Eagles fans more mad at me because I was throwing some shade at Jalen Hurts on a day he accounts for 5 touchdowns and probably
bad timing, pal.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, never tweet during games. Never tweet, Matt.
Never tweet. Dalton never tweets. That guy has to be. By the way, I'm going to make a point to say this to Dalton, but Dalton Del Don never tweets. And then randomly I see him today just saying like Jalen Hyatt can play. And I'm like, this is what you're throwing out here? Like about freaking Jalen Hyatt in the Giants 10, Patriots 7 game? I mean,
he's not wrong. That might stand as our only comment on that game, by the way.
Yeah, well, you could just flash that up there on the YouTube broadcast.
Well, anyway, just to make the Eagles fans a little bit more mad at me, the best team in football right now, and I don't even think it's close. There's a lot of teams that are good. When everybody's kind of close to their peak, I know everybody's hurt right now. It's almost December. The 49ers are the best team in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty much a full-on juggernaut at their best. The Eagles just have that, like, we have a will to win. Like, try to quantify it, whatever. We don't give a damn. We just have a will to win. And they're awfully good. They're so well coached, and it's 1st and 9, not 1st and 10. And the fact that they got Jalen Carter on that team is unfair. They have a bunch of guys who can get to the pass, where the Eagles are wonderful. Back to the Falcons. It's glass half full, glass half empty with Drake London. Okay, he's 7 targets on 21 pass attempts, 33% market share.
but it's 21 pass attempts. Congratulations. You get the biggest piece of pie, and it's the gas station pie. And they're Desmond Ridder passes. Desmond Ridder threw 2 picks today. If you told me he threw 5, I would have believed you. I need Desmond Ridder in a deeper league just to keep the job in a league where we draft 400 guys, and I won't go into it because nobody cares. I just need Ridder to play, because if he plays, he'll score some points. And the whole game, I'm just like, just don't throw your job away. Please just win this game and don't throw 5 interceptions. Well, he won it. He threw 2. He threw a couple more passes that had medicine ball written all over it. So London, congratulations, you're the featured target here. But again, we're divvying up a really small pie. And I think this is the first week, Matt, nobody asked me about Kyle Pitts. People have just given up. They've moved on, and I do not blame them.
It's over. I'm going to write in my Care Don't Care recap. Like, I only care about the Falcons frontline players. Mm-hmm. And right now, that's
which there are 2.
Robinson, and that's Drake London.
Maybe
Kyle
one.
Pitts is. I do think they prioritize.
London looked great. I thought London looked great today.
Awesome.
Actually,
he was awesome. He was great. I think I know they're not going to throw the ball a ton, 21 pass attempts, but prioritizing him and Bijan as pass catchers, and like nobody else has more than 2 targets. Like that's the way it should go. That's the way it should go.
If you're only going to throw 21 passes, but 13 go to Robinson and London, I'm happy.
I will give Desmond Critter. I will give Desmond Ritter.
That's
I mean, shoot, leave that in there. I don't care. I'll give Desmond Critter. He's just a little critter there behind center. I'll give him credit that his throw to Bijan Robinson for the touchdown was pretty sweet.
Great throw. Yeah, one of the prettiest plays of the day. Anticipation throw, puts it perfect spot, walk-in touchdown. On the other side, man, so frustrating. Chris Olave was dominating.
Scott, when you said he would like that, the other best player from the 1 o'clock window, I figured you were going to say Bijan, but like had you said Chris Olave just in the first half alone, I would have been on board with that. He was awesome.
Oh, man, it was the full Chris Olave experience. Like, okay, talk about Garrett Wilson, talk about Marvin Harrison Jr., talk about all these Ohio State receivers. I'm Chris friggin' Olave. I cannot be covered. He was running everything in the route tree and doing it with a Derek Carr, quarterback I don't really trust. He gets hurt in the 3rd quarter. I had Rashid Shaheed on the sleeper list, and I think some people who were maybe a little bit desperate for a receiver, I was pointing them to Shaheed. We'll never know. He was actually open, which should have been a touchdown. Carr missed him, but whatever. He got hurt in the 2nd quarter. I think that was a hamstring. He doesn't play. And the Saints put up a ton of yardage. They never get in the end zone. They kick 6 field goals. They make 5 of them. They end up with 15 points in this game. And it's just so weird. Alvin Kamara, only 3 touchdowns. I know he missed the first part of the season with the suspension, but it's just so weird that when Alvin Kamara came into the league, he was 10 to 13 touches, but they're going to be so explosive and flashy, and you'll live with that. Now Alvin Kamara, and his efficiency was fine today, but now he's a volume guy. Now he survives because he touches the ball more than anybody else. You never know when Taysom Hill's going to pop in. The Saints have just been a knuckleball team all year, and I don't really understand them. It's just frustrating that Olave and Carr, who have not always been on the same page, they were simpatico, man. They looked like peanut butter and jelly today, and then Olave gets hurt, and that just stinks because we've been waiting for this Chris Olave all season. We saw a glimpse of it with Jameis Winston 2 weeks ago, but I think Olave fans, you and I are right up there at the front. We're like, oh, yeah, this is the Chris Olave we fell in love with, and then right when that happens, he gets hurt.
Yeah, Olave was running these like big boy routes too, like the deep outbreaking, intermediate area, deep routes, stuff like that. And those are the routes that Derek Carr was kind of cooking with Devontae Adams on last season. I was expecting to see that a lot more this year, and it's mostly been the check down show. And I mean, that was really a hospital ball that he got injured on anyways, which is classic Derek Carr stuff. He throws the pick 6 in the red zone, which was just absolutely brutal. So it's not as if like Derek Carr shined in this game. I think this was a Chris Olave show. He gets the concussion. It's his 3rd concussion since 2020. So that is something at least to keep an eye on. Man, it's a bummer because he was on his way to a signature game. It really was a potential signature game for him, and that is a bummer. Next game up here, Colts 27, Bucks 20. I put this one in the headliner, Scott, because the Colts right now would make the playoffs over the Texans. Season doesn't end right now. The Browns are the other 6th seed there, based on the way they played today. I don't expect that to last very long. But the Colts are like kicking around in the fringes of the playoff race. And, I know it's not what it could be because it's Gardner Minshew out there. And Gardner Minshew's a respectable backup. Like he's a good backup to have when you look at all the other backups out there right now. But again, just It's a good offense. I enjoy watching this offense. Michael Pittman is awesome. Josh Downs is awesome. Jonathan Taylor is so good. Like that right there, along with Minshew playing solid enough, is more than good enough for the Colts to get where they need to go.
Yeah, in all fairness, when I was talking about the Jags and the Texans and who's going to run this division, getting the coach right, getting the quarterback right, I'm sure some Colts fans were like, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
We just hired Shane Steichen, who's a wizard. He is terrific. Awesome. Some of his play calls today on that 1 4th and short they had where they run the misdirection right, and then they just scheme Michael Pittman wide open, a throw that anybody can make. And, Minshew just floats it to him. Pittman gets like 12, 15 yards, easy as pie. I love it. Not only do you convert, but you take a chunk of the field with you. Why not I love watching the Steichen game plans, and we know there's a bunch of stuff in their playbook they can't run because it was Anthony Richardson stuff, and they'll have to put that on ice for another year. But Pittman was terrific today. Jonathan Taylor, I was asked a few Jonathan Taylor questions, surprised me, but Tampa Bay's got that funnel defense. Well, they didn't have any trouble getting Jonathan Taylor going, 15 for 91, a couple of touchdowns. Zach Moss does what he does. He's the secondary piece now. And I like that too. As good as Moss looked, once Taylor showed that he was back to full conditioning, full health, it's going to be the Jonathan Taylor offense. And their passing game, I like Josh Downs too, but it's going to be the Michael Pittman show. And what does Shane Steichen do? What we're always begging coaches to do, prioritize your best players. And that's what the Colts do. On the other side, I guess the touchdown regression is never going to come for Chris Godwin, but Mike Evans scores all the touchdowns, going to the Hall of Fame. And Rachaad White, usually it's a lot of volume and bad efficiency. Today it was actually a little bit less volume, but the efficiency was better. I know a lot of it was 38-yard run, but whatever. Rachaad White, even on the injury report, he comes up with a playable game. He at least meets his projection, maybe exceeded it. He didn't get a touchdown today, but at least we know what the Bucs are going to do. Evans is going to score a touchdown. Rachaad White's going to get a lot of touches. Cade Otton be okay. Chris Godwin will be okay, but won't score a touchdown. The Buccaneers, every game, I feel like they do the same thing.
Yeah, they really are. So just like repeat. We've talked about this a lot. Like, is a guy due? Is it regression, or is he just not playing up to standard? I mean, the reality of the Bucs receivers is there have been times where it's like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are neck and neck in terms of how well they're playing. Right now, it's not close. Like, Mike Evans is just playing way better ball than Chris Godwin is, and that has been the case for the last 2 years. So yeah, it's a lot of the same stuff over again for the Bucs. But man, if you drafted Mike Evans when nobody wanted him this year, you are turning a serious profit.
And when a button works, they keep pressing it, right? I always talk about that analogy with baseball closers. When somebody gets the 3 outs in the 9th inning, say, okay, that's good. Let's do that again. When Baker Mayfield's near the goal line, he's like, where's number 13? And that play works. They keep calling it.
Yeah, keep going. I mean, that's the mark of a good coordinator, is like the lack of fear in just hitting the same button over and over again and not getting cued. All right, final game in the headliner section here. Chiefs 31, Raiders 17. The only reason I have this in the headliner section is, Scott, because there was a moment where we thought, like, oh boy, not looking so great for the Kansas City Chiefs. The Raiders jump out to a 14-point lead, and then quickly it was just like, okay, the Chiefs turn it on and they go to work, mostly on the back of rookie receiver Rashee Rice and Isaiah Pacheco.
Finally, the Rice game. The last time we saw Kansas City, it was Patrick Mahomes throwing 2 dimes, dropped by MVS, dropped by Watson. Poor Patrick Mahomes, he doesn't have any receivers. Well, Rashee Rice has been an efficiency champion all year. It's always been, well, why he has to be part of this rotation? Why can't Rashee Rice play more? Because when he's targeted, when he's asked to run a route, he's productive. And well, today they targeted him 8 times, 8 for 107 and a touchdown. And I don't see a team, again, that's down bad at receiver. So what happened? MVS was basically phased out of this game. They gave Sky Moore 3 piddly targets. He almost got a touchdown late in this game. But Chiefs can't mess around, man. They need – Kelsey's great, but he's 34. Pacheco's a good player, but he can't be a foundational offensive player. He's just kind of an ancillary piece. They need Rashee Rice finally to be a full-fledged member of this receiving group and stop with whatever his – snap shares have been or route shares have been. They need to, and I get it. A lot of times with rookies, we talk about the ascension, right? Where the first month or 2 is learning how to play and getting your feet wet. And then they're not really rookies anymore. Sometime in late October, November, whatever. Now we're almost to December. I would think they would lean into Rashee Rice the rest of the season, and I will rank him very proactively the rest of the way.
Yeah, Rashee Rice played a season high 75% of the snaps in this one. Now, obviously, no Kadarius Toney, no
So
McCole
what?
Hardman. Hardman's on
So
IR.
what?
But yes, it should be so what.
I don't wish anybody hurt, but I mean, the Chiefs don't miss those guys.
Oh, no, absolutely. And look, he has been kind of doing similar things to those guys because Hardman and Tony are like pure gadget guys. And I've said this a lot that every Rashee Rice route looks the same. Like all the Rashee Rice plays look the same. And frankly, some of his big plays in this one look very similar to those like crossing routes from the slot over the middle and get a bunch of yak on it. However, he had 2 catches of 15 plus air yards in this game. There are more things that you can ask Rashee Rice to do, and it is time, beyond time, past time, for you to ask him to do those things and see what can happen, because he clearly is a good player already, and just like imagine if he does add more outside the numbers and like big boy route stuff, because right now it is still very, they clearly trust him to do those over the middle, the drags and the crossing routes and the slants and everything like that, and get a bunch of yak afterwards, but there's got to be more that he can do here. I think he can do more, Hardman and Tony aren't needle movers, and like it shouldn't be the reason that he has this breakout game, even though I think it was the reason he probably played 75% of the snaps. He should be playing 75% of the snaps going forward, like enough already with some of these other guys.
I don't want to say on the other side, I don't want to say Aiden O'Connell was great today, but he played well enough that I think any of the Raiders that you wanted to play Jacobs, and generally when the Raiders are big underdogs, it's kind of risky to play Jacobs, but if O'Connell can play this well, mid-sevens YPA, he didn't throw any picks, he only took 1 sack, then that means we can play Jacoby Myers, we can play Josh Jacobs. It's a little bit frustrating that Devontae Adams hasn't been scoring touchdowns, but 5 for 73, 7 targets, whatever. You'll live with that game. It didn't crush you. Hopefully your other players made up for it. But all we're asking for Aiden O'Connell is to keep the offense to have some sense of buoyancy. And today, they obviously ran out of steam. They got a lead. They didn't play well in the second half, whatever. This is the first time I felt like Aiden O'Connell has a chance. For the most part, I thought he was just playing because they were done with Garoppolo and they accepted that Brian Hoyer maybe was the final straw of getting Josh McDaniels fired. He's just too old. There's no upside here. Let's just see if O'Connell can play. I felt like at least for a half today, I was encouraged by O'Connell, and it makes me feel better about the Raiders that I do want to play.
All right, let's move on to the rest of the games here from Week 12 Sunday slate, starting with a surprising result for me. Rams 37, Cardinals 14. Cardinals still losing games despite Kyler Murray being back. But, man, the Rams, 4 touchdowns from Matthew Stafford coming off the bye. Kyron Williams returns to a massive fantasy role and performance. Royce Freeman got 13 carries and a touchdown, but most of that was late in the game. Kyron is still, he's back as a clear-cut fantasy RB1.
This is what I feel worst about with the start-sit stuff. A lot of people ask me about Williams, and some people could start him based on how I saw it. Some people maybe see a prove-it week, and he goes over 200 total yards. He scores 2 touchdowns. We knew he would have a healthy market share, and I know Sal Vitri has been pounding the table for weeks. Trade for this guy. He never comes off the field. If you played him, it's hard to play a guy off a long layoff, especially a guy like Williams who, before this season, people had no expectations for him really, and then looked like other guys would be there. But he was very, very good today, and I felt like a lot of that was Arizona too. They're a more interesting team with Kyler Murray. Not that Murray was great today, but their defense looked really, really bad, and it made a Rams offense that hasn't been the greatest in the world look really good today. Although it's funny, I told you Matthew Stafford threw 4 touchdowns. Oh, great!
Yeah.
Puka, what did he do? 4 for 27. Oh, it must have been the Cooper Kupp show. 3 for 18. I did steer a lot of people away from Cooper Kupp. I wasn't really sure what to expect. But did anybody expect Tyler Higbee to have his one game of the year, 5 for 29 and 2 touchdowns? Atwell had a couple of big plays. The funny thing is, even after the Rams score 37, the only player I'm going to feel great about recommending next week is going to be Williams. I don't know what to do with their passing game.
Yeah, it's bizarre. Tyler Higbee was a injury question mark coming into this game, and he still scores 2 touchdowns. So I do think better days will be ahead for these receivers. Probably just one of those things happen type of performances where Matthew Stafford goes off. But I do worry Cooper Kupp got a little banged up in this one. Too.
I got to ask you this: is Kupp, because Kupp was a little banged up the last few weeks? Is he? Mm-hmm. Is he one of those guys you just start no matter what, or does it come down to, I'll have a conversation about? I was asked a lot of Kupp questions today. I think he belongs in that. I got to think this over. I got to read the tea leaves. I got to see how the practice week goes. I don't think he's an automatic player at all right now.
Oh, yeah. Somebody asked me today, would you start Tank Dell, Puka Nacua, DJ Moore, Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams? And like Kupp was the first one I ruled out off that list. So
yeah, I know a lot. I told a lot of people to use the Houston guys over Kupp. I think I might have told some people to use DJ Moore over Kupp. And who knows? Maybe DJ Moore will lay a giant egg on Monday. We don't know. But,
I also, said DJ Moore.
Yeah. The bottom line is Kupp. And also, my friend and our editor, Jason Kabaka, was talking about this. If you are a Kupp manager, you want the Rams to stay on the precipice of playoff contention because you don't want them to get into a spot where they're eliminated. And if Kupp's got something bothering him, it's just too easy to say, well, okay, let's sit the last 2 or 3 games out. So it was important if you have Kupp that they actually won this game.
Yeah, they're the 9th seed right now, so they're still very much in the mix here. Not much to say for Arizona for me. I mean, it was nice to see Marquise Brown pop up for a game and Trey McBride continuing to do his thing. They need Michael Wilson back. They need some more playmakers there. It is what it is, I think, on the Cardinals.
One thing about Arizona I'll say is that even though James Conner should have the backfield to himself, because so many of their rushing touchdowns are going to either Murray, and they even bring in Tune sometimes that he ran in the 2-pointer.
Yeah, that's right.
I think that really kills Conner because his goal line equity just shrinks significantly. You think, oh, great, it's his backfield. 1st and goal at the 1, it's James Conner. No, it's Kyler Murray. It's Clayton Tune. It's not James Conner.
All right, next game up here, Broncos 29, Browns 12. Rough game for the Browns from an on-field perspective. They also lose Dorian Thompson-Robinson in this one. They lose Amari Cooper in this one. Myles Garrett was in a sling afterwards. I mean, look, again, similar to what I said with the Bengals, like you lose your starting quarterback, even if your starting quarterback is Deshaun Watson and he's not playing anywhere close to like what Joe Burrow can do, it's still pretty tough to recover. Now you start to stack other injuries to some of your premier players like Myles Garrett, like Amari Cooper. It's just going to be tough. It's going to be tough for the Browns going forward. And it just sucks because their defense is one of the stories of the season to me. But the Broncos right now are 5-0 in the last 5 games. And Scott, I mean, look, it's not pretty. I mean, we don't have much to talk about from a fantasy perspective in this game, but it is at least nice to see the Broncos kind of recovering to be the team that I thought they could be at least under Sean Payton in the first year under Russell Wilson. Kind of game managing. I called them tastefully boring last week. That's about how I feel about them.
I think the Broncos have become what we thought the Browns were a month ago. Look at their wins. 21-20, 24-9, 19-17. They win this game 29-12. And you look at the fantasy production, it feels like it was 6-3. Who were you glad you played? I mean, I guess you might have had to have played Cortland Sutton. You got 61 yards. You take it. He had a couple of near misses. They did try to get him the ball near the goal line, which they always do. I'm really impressed with Cortland Sutton. He didn't do it today, but he's a good player. I'd continue to play him. Javonte Williams will never score a rushing touchdown. It's just kind of a federal mandate at this point. Samaje Perine gets enough work to get in Williams' way, not enough work you can ever play him. Wilson, he does get his hands on a rushing and a throwing touchdown, but he only throws for 134 yards. They're great job getting back in it. What's going to happen is they're going to make the playoffs, and some team like Buffalo won't. And people will scream up and down like, well, Buffalo could win the Super Bowl and the Broncos are just going to lose in the first Saturday afternoon game. They'll probably be like that first window game, the Shakey's Pizza game that Cousin Sal and Bill Simmons used to talk about. But we all left them for dead when they lost 70-20. So the fact that they're even tastefully boring right now, that's such a huge step forward, like 5 steps forward from where they were 8 weeks ago.
Our last 2 games here are not tastefully boring. They are just boring, including Giants 10, Patriots 7. I mean, the Patriots quarterback, it's just eye-rolling, bad, awful, terrible. 3 interceptions between both Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi. I mean, it's so beyond over for Mac Jones. I don't even know what to say. But hey, Tommy DeVito, he just keeps winning games for these Giants and getting them out of contention for taking a top 2 quarterback in this draft.
What do we do with the Jalen Hyatt game? That's the only takeaway here.
I mean, I don't know that I'm gonna be banking on it. I think Jalen Hyatt's a good player, or let me say this: I think he is a good player for where he went. In the draft, I didn't think he was a first round pick, but I thought he was a perfectly reasonable pick. In the 3rd round, I'm trying to look up the route if anybody has routes run on him right now from this game, but that I don't know that he's a must add for me. What about you?
The only thing I would say is that 6 teams don't play next week, because usually late in the season, I'd say, well, if you're not going to start them, I would rather you roster a running back who's one injury away from being impactful for you, because you're never going to feel great about this quarterback room, because it's going to be Taylor, it's going to be DeVito, and whatever. They got a win here today, but there's nothing going on.
The Giants are also on bye next week too.
Okay,
so.
yeah. You know what? There you go. You're not going to wait. Yeah, I should have known that off the top of my head. But yeah, it feels like they're on bye more often than not. And as a Patriot fan, it's just a highlight. Anytime they can lose a game like this, Mac Jones throws soul-crushing picks, Bailey Zappi. It's like the Jets, right? We get a bench Zach Wilson. Well, maybe Tim Boyle's worse. It's like the Patriots. We got to get Mac Jones out of there. I like Bailey Zappi for what he is, which is he should be a backup quarterback for the rest of his life. It's just, the Patriots need to lose as many games as possible, and this was one of them.
Yeah. We'll see if Jalen Hyatt's role is sticky. That is at least something to watch for these Giants. But I wonder if
he's going to be pretty good. If Dalton Del Don tweets about him on an NFL Sunday, man, he's going to be a pretty good player. He's got to be
pretty good. That is, I'm assuming this game was somehow mixed up in Dalton's Survivor, dreams. But we'll see. When
Dalton tweeted, I just thought maybe there was on the court mail like, we're paying $500 per tweet on Sunday. Like maybe Dalton's getting involved in some special giveaway we're having at Yahoo headquarters.
I mean, hey, new leadership changes, baby. Maybe somebody mandated it. We'll never know. All right, last game we will talk about here. Titans 17, Panthers 10. Apparently, David Tepper just screamed the F word leaving the locker. And I mean, yeah, buddy, this is all your fault. So I don't know what to tell you.
Man, the Panthers, I had to take Tennessee in our Dalton's survivor pool, actually. 4 teams were left. We all took Tennessee. And even though it was only a 17-10 final, Carolina is one of those teams that once they fall behind by 7 points, you just feel like the game is over. I guess the Thielen thing is over.
Yeah, it's
Chuba Hubbard gets in the end zone, but whatever, 14 for 45. A lot of people asked me about Derrick Henry, and I did tell them to start Derrick Henry, but I mean, 18 for 76 against the Panthers. He gets one catch for 0 yards. He got bailed out by the 2 touchdowns, but I can't feel confident about Derrick Henry against a real football team. Chig Okonkwo has been so down bad that just to see him go 4 for 45 in a game made me kind of feel good, but that's not even in a weak tight end market, that's not going to do it. Another quiet DeAndre Hopkins game. So whatever bounce he got with Will Levis seems dead now. These might be 2 teams you just don't want any. If you make the fantasy playoffs, you should have rosters strong enough that you don't need any of these guys. I think the Thielen thing is just about over. I think Derrick Henry could have 23 yards in any game, and we know if they fall behind, he's not going to have a role in the receiving game. And DeAndre Hopkins is not guaranteed a big target share every week. I mean, he may have games where he only has 4 or 5 targets, and we know the Titans are probably capped around 16 points a week. So these are 2 of the worst. Again, you're in the fantasy playoffs. I hope you don't need players on either one of these teams.
Adam Thielen has he's averaged over 10 yards per catch twice since the month of September. So yeah, some of his production was just very hollow anyways. So like a 1 for 2 doesn't totally shock me.
He's great for that option route. I like Adam. He's 33 years old and you need to win a 7-yard reception on 3rd and 5. He can do that, but no downfield element. And I feel sorry for Bryce Young. He didn't ask to be the first pick in the draft. He didn't ask to be an undersized quarterback. He didn't ask to go to Frank Reich and go to a team that is so lacking. Thielen should be your 3rd receiver. He shouldn't be your best guy. Jonathan Mingo did make a couple of plays in this game. I'm curious to see what he becomes in future seasons. But I mean, the Panthers are 1-10. I can't believe they beat the Texans. If the Texans don't make the playoffs, it's going to kill them that they lost to the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, I mean, it would kill the Carolina Panthers if they hadn't beaten the Houston Texans. Not that it really removes anything else that has happened this year, but that would be an all-time disaster.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Scott, just real quick, we had 3 games on Thursday, Thanksgiving. We're not going to break those down here because we had so much to talk about on Sunday, but any just like 1 or 2 quick things, rapid fire, you want the people to know that you have, kind of hanging in the take chamber from Thursday?
Yep, I'll give you a rapid fire on all the 8 teams that played early. The Lions will be fine. Not worried about them. Jordan Love has done it multiple weeks in a row. And remember, they have such a young receiver group. They're growing up. I can't believe Jalen Reed's roster tag took so long to go over 50%. Mo Castillo was writing about him today. The market's behind on him. Fix that. I'd like to see Dallas beat a good team, but man, when they play a bad team, they are bullies and they just take teams to the woodshed. Tony Pollard, it's at the point now where a 70 and a touchdown will take it because they've become more of a passing team. Even though Sam Howell's having a quasi breakout year, I wish I could feel good about any of the Commanders receivers. I don't. I already talked about San Francisco. I think they're the best team in football. Unfortunately, they have so many great players that one always kind of gets left behind because there's only so many footballs. But give me all the 49ers. I think they're going to the Super Bowl. Man, Seattle. Geno Smith, he doesn't look healthy. He doesn't look confident. DK Metcalf's leaving stuff on the field. I think Seattle's going to find a way to miss the playoffs. I don't trust them. Congratulations, Jets. You found a quarterback worse than Zach Wilson. It's Tim Boyle. He didn't ask for this. 1 touchdown, 13 interceptions at University of Connecticut. And he's in the NFL. That's just a miracle. And Miami, I'm going to get killed by the Eagles fans. If I had an MVP vote, I would give it to Tyreek Hill. I think he's the most impactful player in the NFL this year, in a year that hasn't been great for quarterback play. I know Hurts just had the 5 touchdowns, but I think if Tyreek Hill gets to 2,000 yards with a quarterback that people kind of accept is good but not great, I think Tyreek Hill might have an outside chance at this.
All this 49ers talk, Scott, slight Eagles shade is setting you up for next week when these two teams play, 49ers and Eagles next week.
Love it. When is that?
It's a 425 game, which is
a
shame.
425 game. I wish it was a night game, but that's okay.
Chiefs and Green Bay on Sunday night that week, which isn't the worst thing in the world, because I'm with you that I continue to have some confidence building up here on the Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love and how he's playing with this young receiver core. That's
we need it,
good.
Man. We're so desperate for good quarterback play just to see Jordan Love start to play better. Yeah, we need this. Come on, step right in. We have plenty of seats for you.
I probably could have done without Jake Browning on Monday night, though. We could have probably moved San Francisco, Philadelphia to that one, but it's Jags Bengals on Monday night. So alas.
And just remember, 6 teams on bye, which means a couple of things. One, you need to make preparations for next week. And then in a lot of leagues, the following Monday, the teams that don't play, those players will be available on waivers. You can drop a player you didn't use, so maybe a defense you might want. They're not going to be stars, of course, because people are going to hold on to their best players. But make sure a week from today, you check your waiver wire, because you can cut the line and pick up some of the guys who don't play. And maybe, who knows, maybe you'll talk yourself into Jalen Highland on that day or whatever. But it's a little quirk in the Yahoo rules. Andy Behrens has manipulated it to his benefit for years. I'm sick of watching Behrens get away with it. I want you, dear listener, to get away with it a week from Monday.
All right. That's going to do it for us. Hell of a show, Scott. Appreciate you, buddy. All of you out there, be sure to tune in on Tuesday, where Andy and I go through the post-Week 12 version of the People's Panic Meter. We're going to put somebody in the coping corner. Can't wait to see who it is. Until then, we're out.